ready to go for our first... You ready to go for our first review?
Sure am, Jack.
Black Panther review?
Black Panther review. I've got Cap with me, ready to talk about Marvel.
Excellent. You ready?
So pumped.
Ready?
Ready.
Ready! Ready! Ready!
First review.
What the fuck?
What?
Oh, hey Luke, what's going on?
Oh, not much, man. It's just in the neighbourhood. What are you guys up to?
Oh, we're filming a Black Panther review. Do you want to watch?
Nah. Hasn't everybody seen that film by now?
Grab him!
Right. Are you going to behave yourself, or are we going to take this further?
Black Panther. Woo.
That's right.
The story differs from the rest of the Marvel films in that it's more of a coming-of-age story. More about dealing with the politics of family and tradition rather than defeating the horny bad guy with the magic cube. But this film, in my opinion, is all the better for it.
King T'Challa, after losing his father in Civil War, is the heir and rightful king to the nation of Wakanda. And immediately is beset with the responsibility of bringing Claw Ulysses Claw, played by Andy Serkis, to justice after the theft of their precious vibranium, which powers their literal everything and makes them pretty much invulnerable to gunfire.
Convenient. Now, before we go any further with this review, we are going to be pronouncing African names, and we're not sure if we have them correct, so if we bugger it up, soz.
You unimaginable bastard.
All the while, the film takes the time to build the subplot of a wayward boy named Killmonger who has a right to the throne and an axe to grind. This all leads to T'Challa having to stare down at the more controversial aspects of this society, and the transformation of his character is a thrilling sight to behold. Oh, how's it looking? Is it still recording?
Yeah.
Chadwick Boseman makes a stellar return to the character, which has been fleshed out and made even more interesting since Civil War. It's a compliment to his acting What the fuck are you doing?
I'm trying to read the love letter on this shit.
We're gonna keep that. It's a compliment to his acting chops that he immediately made me care about him in his small role in Civil War, and then he comes back and is immediately better and more fleshed out. Having a movie to himself is just amazing to watch.
Chadwick Boseman really was phenomenal in this film. Unlike many other superhero stories, Boseman played T'Challa with a sincere, almost reserved honesty, and the gravitas of a man who only ever wanted to do the right thing, and now, quite literally, has the weight of an entire people on his shoulders. We see this weight through his eyes, his body language, his simple gestures. You can tell that he really has put thought and care into every little moment of his performance in order to help progress the story.
However, after watching this a second time, I'm honestly still coming to the terms of my monumental crush I have on General Okoye, played by Danai Gurira. Oh my god, the way she breaks off faces and breaks people's morale with her wit, we are not worthy.
One of the things I loved most about this film was the cinematography and colour grading. This is one of the best looking Marvel films I've seen since the two Guardians films. And that's not to say that any of the Marvel films are poorly shot, far from it, but they do tend to have a very grey-scale, almost concrete-y colour palette. What I think of a lot is the airport fight scene in Civil War. Amazing sequence, brilliantly directed and edited, but is let down a bit by some grey and silver tones that I just don't think gel well with what you're seeing on screen. Whereas here we see some fantastic greens, blues, fiery yellows that really bring out I don't know where I'm going with this point now.
I think you have a point though. It's actually, but for me, I actually think what really came through was the color and diversity of the costumes.
Oh,
The
yes.
costume design of
Mwah.
Ruth E. Carter was absolutely stellar, and you could tell each different society what they did and how it worked, and they clearly weren't ashamed of using their African origins to make informed choices.
Yeah.
Just little things like having this big lipped fellow, whatever the African term is, I apologize. But it was amazing to see all of that kind of come together into this modern society. And also that there was clearly a lot of practicality as well. And then going all the way to the primitive nature of the Jabari. Just white furs. So all across the Rangers spectrum, so much colour. Amazing.
And that also leads me to the fantastic art direction by Hannah Beecher and her phenomenally talented team. Even though I do have some problems with the execution, which we can get into later on, the look and feel of Wakanda was fantastic. Everything from the costumes, you said, to the design, to the layout of this city felt like a real, living, breathing place with history as well. It felt like a place I could actually go to and visit. The fight choreography in this film was very strong as well, and also very visceral. And was shot in a very cathartic, almost disorientating style, with the camera falling underwater, flipping backwards, making the audience feel just as disorientated as T'Challa or any other character would feel. You are surprised when a punch comes out of nowhere or a kick suddenly appears.
I agree, but I also think that it was also incredibly tight. Like when there were certain scenes where the camera is making just smooth motions across the plane of wherever it happens to be, and at no point did I feel like in certain other superhero movies, Christopher Nolan, we're cutting from place to place and it's a blur of motion. At no point did I feel sick. So I think the best part was they managed to find that fine line between smooth and jarring.
Performance-wise, my highlight has got to be Andy Serkis.
Oh yeah.
He provided some much needed levity and was suitably insane. Even with his flippant charm, he still felt very threatening, kind of like an aged bounty hunter who's seen his fair share of the world and doesn't have time for the gravitas that these new heroes might want to bring. You know, he'll chuck on some music when he's in the middle of a car chase, that's a spoiler.
No, I think that's okay.
He'll happily belt out what is love when he's in a tight situation. I said that weird. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really way to get back on Vibranium, Mr. Fuck you.
Hang on, I'm gonna get this ready. Ready? Hold still, you goose. Can I say the line? I want to get it right. Director of photography, please behave yourself.
Okay.
We need to keep it now because I'm going to look like Carlos Cooper.
Technical difficulties, back to our program.
And most importantly, Forrest Whitaker is in this movie.
The pilot, the message, all of it. You come here to kill me? All of it. Get on with it! Oh!
One of the biggest problems I had with this film was villain focus. And I gotta stress this, Michael B. Jordan and Andy Serkis were phenomenal in this film. The biggest problem though is trying to cram these two villains into a 2-hour runtime, I want to say. You end up with situations where Michael B. Jordan appears at the start of the film, vanishes for a good chunk of it, and then reappears at the end. And because of that, it makes the climax feel quite forced, in my opinion. I believe in everything that he says. The trouble is, because it all happens in the last, I want to say, 30 to 40 minutes, it makes everything proceed at quite a jarring pace.
My biggest issue simply was that I didn't see enough of Andy Serkis. I think
Yeah.
one of those things is that at the end of the day, while I accept that there needs to be seriousness in these films, and they play the fine line very well, when Andy Serkis is off screen, it does feel a little bit too dramatic.
Melodrama, would you
Yeah,
say?
a bit too melodramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, but not without reason, just...
Sure.
there's, you know, the melodrama of like races and
Yeah.
kings and Shakespearean stuff, or you could have another, you know, chase with techno blasting. I know what I prefer.
Absolutely, but I had a point and I lost it. But again, I think that comes back to the pacing. I personally love the melodrama. The trouble is, half of the film feels like a slapstick comedy with Andy Serkis. The other half feels like a melodrama. It doesn't blend together as well as it could.
I think you can actually make that argument for a lot of Marvel films, though.
Sure.
There's a big argument, particularly from DC fans, and I am a DC fan. I'm one of you. You're a little bit overdramatic. However, you have one point in this regard. Sometimes it's a little too jokey. We can look back at Thor Ragnarok, for example, like the beginning, just like, oh, I'm spinning on a train. Whoa, I'm the son of Odin.
But that's fun because it's
fun, but they didn't stop.
Sure,
That's one of my biggest issues. They want to appeal to so many different audiences, and that's commendable. But at this point, they're owned by Disney. They have the mouse's money. They've got the biggest marketing campaign probably so far in the world, and it's Avengers-related material. They're the only ones that have done a shared universe properly. You don't have to appeal so much to everyone anymore. Maybe you did 10 years ago with Iron Man and the like. But now I think it's time for you to feel confident in what you want to do.
I found that a lot of Thor Ragnarok was almost a deconstruction of the Marvel formula, which is why it was such a straight down the nose comedy. But then the trouble is when you have a film like this, it feels so earnest, it feels so sincere. It is a shame sometimes when you've got scenes where you can tell they're maybe not trusting in the material that they're writing or giving themselves enough credit to just go to that place 100%.
You're right, that like as soon as Andy Serkis is off screen, it does kind of go in a different direction. I didn't personally have a problem with it, but for those that did, I can see why it would be distracting and you could possibly make that argument.
Sure.
Personally, overall though, I really enjoyed myself. So I don't have as big a problem with it as you, I'm afraid.
Well, I really did enjoy myself, and the trouble is, I just saw a lot of missed opportunity. And it's a bit difficult to get into details here without going into spoilers, but you may notice that while watching this.
But I think all our negatives aside, I think one thing must be mentioned is that they took the most arguably awkward character in the Marvel Universe right now, alongside Luke Cage. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
These characters were created at the time because those things were popular in the genre at the time, and they've been really difficult to work out what to do with since, particularly Luke Cage.
Sure,
he was known as the hero for hire, had a big afro, he talked, don't you touch that cracker song, like that's how he talked. And it was really an awkward point where it's popular and then it's racist and then blaxploitation is almost revered now, people like it, so it's got this weird aging process. And you got Black Panther, who's kind of got the same thing. People aren't inaccurate in saying that, like, oh, it's kind of an African Batman. Kind of, little bit, got some Thor mixed in too. But the most interesting thing is that it's looking at the society of Black Panther and kind of going, this is amazing and we want you to have fun, but we also don't not want you to think. And they take this idea and they go, these guys, these Wakandans, they're privileged and they haven't done anything with it. And here's what it might have looked like if that actually happened. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. And that was definitely the strongest point of the film for me. But again, that comes back to one of my flaws. I felt like they didn't take enough time to explore that. Maybe because they didn't trust in that idea and that narrative enough without throwing in the quippy, crazy, almost buddy cop style.
Again, going back to appealing to everybody.
Exactly, which was great. That stuff with Claw was fantastic. But I felt like there wasn't enough time in this 2-hour runtime to explore both avenues evenly. You almost need not necessarily a 3-hour long running time, but you need either a longer running time, or if you want to tell all of these different stories, you do a TV series. But that's a double-edged sword. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
It can only be attributable to human error.
Overall, I really enjoyed my time here. Yes, there are some issues, but I think that can only improve with practice. I really commend the director and the whole team behind it. They really had a passion for what they were doing, and for such an awkward premise, they handled it with such flair and aplomb. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars.
It's earnest, it's sincere. This is a passion project, and that's something you don't normally see in Hollywood these days, so Go see it, throw your money at it. We want a sequel. Maybe we can see these avenues explored a little clearer next time. I'm excited for it. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5 lovely stars.
I think he passed out.
Oh, shit.
All of it!
I know you gentlemen have had a hard day, but I'd rather not spend the rest of the winter tied to this fucking couch!
It's a chair.